Let's go ahead and get started with today's session, folks. I just wanted to begin with a couple of my own remarks, and then I'm going to turn the program over to Brittany Eliezer for the balance of the program, and she will be running today's session and introducing some of the folks that are associated with TEDCO, advisors to TEDCO, employees and executives and others that may or may not appear. I just wanted to congratulate each of you, Nika, Rob, Muhammad, Patrick, Omari, Nancy, Angel. We've made it to the last week of this program. And for me, it went by pretty fast. I know it's been very intense, and I've been putting a lot of added pressure every chance I could just to get you ready to really get into this phase of the program. We have come from sort of a wide lens and in a deductive process made it down to a very narrow one. So now today you're at the point where the data is synthesized, or the customer discovery has been ongoing and robust, and your understanding of the revenue models and growth projections and things of that nature are better defined. And so today is our opportunity to do one thing, and that is to pitch as if it were formal. And the good news is that it's not formal, because you get to use these professionals to evaluate your pitch, your deck, ask you questions and things of that nature. So I just wanted to congratulate everyone on the hard work. I'm happy that the second tranche is available for you. We have met those milestones, right? Each one of you have met the milestones. You identified a clear business model. You, did the customer discovery calls that you were supposed to. And also we finished this program without one session being missed by anybody, and by all of you attending and participating in everything that we've requested. So I'm very, very proud of your seriousness of purpose, that this is serious and you've taken it that way. And I'm also very grateful to now over 100 people who have volunteered their time to help you get where you are in one way or another. We've gone over 100 folks that are helping you 5. And so today we've got another 5 people to add to that or more to help you get to where you're going. And I'm very thankful that in the very beginning of designing the curriculum for this year, Neil Davis and I were thinking about how to end it. And it was Neil's idea to end it with Anne and Brittany saying that this was an amazing opportunity to really kind of bring everything that you learned together and have a prelude pitch opportunity. And with that, I'd just like to turn it over to you, Brittany. Thank you for being today's host, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Oh, good morning, everyone. I'm Brittany Eliezer, and I'm the advisory coordinator at TEDCO, and I manage the Prelude pitch. The Prelude pitch is something that TEDCO hosts once a month. We typically have about 4 or 5 companies pitch, and the way it works is that you have 10 minutes to pitch, 10 minutes of Q&A with our advisors, which we have 3 that will be on today, and then 10 minutes of feedback. And each segment is timed. I'll be using my timer to make sure that each segment is 10 minutes. If you go over the 10 minutes when you're pitching, I'm gonna cut you off as soon as the timer goes off. You may not hear it, but I'll just tell you to stop. So yeah, with that being said, I will allow everyone to introduce themselves. The 3 advisors that we have on today will be Valerie Bill, Tanya Baskin, and McKeever Conwell. Mac will be on at 12. So I'll make sure he gets to introduce himself at that time. But I'll turn it over to Anne, which she is the Director of Advisory Services at TEDCO, and she'll also be giving a small presentation of our website. So Anne, do you want to start?
Sorry.
Oh,
Hi, yeah, my name again is Ann Balduzzi. I'm TEDCO's Director of Advisory Services. I'm also have been the founder of a technology startup that was actually located at ETC. So I've been along a similar journey as many of you are entering into these days. But I'll go ahead and keep the introductions going, and then when that's all finished, we'll flip back to me and I'll give you a little more detail and information on TEDCO.
okay. Valerie, would you like to start?
Oh, well, good morning. It's a pleasure being here. I'm Valerie Lancaster Beal. I'm a new advisor with TEDCO. I have been an investment banker for 25 plus years, including owning my own investment banking company. And now I'm our CFO of a company, of a women's empowerment group that does pitch contests and other empowerment programs for executive women of color.
Great, thank you. Tanya?
Good afternoon. Well, actually, it's still morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tanya Baskin. I'm a new advisor to TEDCO. I currently have my own marketing and strategic communications firm called the Baskin Group. I've been doing marketing, communications, social impact investing for the last 20 years, and happy to hear your pitches.
Thank you. Omari?
Yes. Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can see it.
Hi, I'm Omari. I'm one of the founders for DIPS Technology. We have the Sankofa Community Network project that we're ready to, or preparing to launch in Baltimore and hopefully in a couple of other markets across the country. Is my pitch starting right now, or
No.
this is just an introduction?
This is the introduction.
Okay, there we go. I said I had 2 cups of coffee already. I'm ready to go. And so that's who we are. Nancy and I and Kareem and Obisha have been on this grind prior to August submitting the application, and we've learned a lot. It's been an interesting learning curve for us, and we're excited to pitch, and we're excited to hear what the other members of the cohort are doing as well.
Great, thank you. Patrick?
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Patrick. I am the founder of Spur. We are a transportation kind of startup where we want to kind of, I guess, merge the convenience of like Airbnb with commercial drivers and to kind of create a new way to drive things like trucks, buses, and things of that nature.
Great, thank you. Angel?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Angel St. Jean. I am the CEO and co-founder of the Black Brain Trust. We have created a scoring tool and a software platform that sort of works like a credit score for companies that helps them to understand where they are on equity and where they need to make investments to improve.
Great, thank you. Full blast steam?
Mute.
Hello, everybody. I'm Muhammad Ajiola from Full Blast Steam. We are a research and development corporation focused on increasing the amount of young people attracted to and constantly engaging in STEAM activities in our city.
Thank you. Nancy?
Hi, I am Nancy Goldring, the founding partner and CEO of Sankofa DIPS Technology. Our solution is Sankofa Community Network. I'm grateful to be here, grateful to be at this stage of the program. It has been rigorous, incredibly, it's been a real stretch. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity today, and I'm grateful to be here, and thank you all for giving us the listening ear. And congrats to my cohort members.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nika?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nika Namdi, creator of Fight Blight Be More, a social, environmental, and economic justice initiative aimed at remediating blight, led by the village and informed by the data.
Nice.
Great, thank you. Rob?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Rob Drayton, co-founder and CTO of the Black Brain Trust, partnering with Angel. I have approximately 20 years of experience in technology, so trying to leverage that experience for our mission.
Great, thank you. RYG Light.
You know, Brittany, I think
Yeah, I didn't think
we have covered the cohort. So
oh, did we cover? Okay.
Yeah. So
well,
why don't we
have
go
one
ahead
more
and
person. Hold on. Well, sorry, 1 second. Our CEO, Troy, still
excellent.
Troy, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right, thank you, Brittany. Good morning, everyone. I apologize. I'm going to be popping in and out. I'm trying to attend as much as I can and work around some other meetings, but when Brittany told me about this, I want to be a part of this. I'm very excited about hearing some of these companies. I will tell you for TEDCO's perspective, even though we're a state organization, we have responsibilities across the state. Baltimore is very special and something we want to make sure that we're putting the right sort of efforts into Baltimore. So hopefully you're going to see more of these and not less of these. So I appreciate you, Brittany, and all those that are, and Ann, thank you. And I look forward to hearing as much as I can that I can hear from these companies.
Before you go, Troy, this is Deb Tillett, and I am the president of ETC. I just want to thank you because TEDCO and Accelerate Baltimore have been pretty much hand in hand since day one in 2012. Ann knows this. Many of the companies that go through Accelerate Baltimore and get their first 25,000 or 50,000 in this instance, the next stop is usually TEDCO, and you have been very generous and supporting. So thank you and welcome. I know we've not met, but welcome.
Well, I look forward to meeting, and we again, I have some announcements I want to make about Baltimore. We're going to have a real commitment to Baltimore going forward. Okay.
Great, thank you. That's
Excellent.
my commitment.
Thank you.
Okay. So we did all of the introductions. Well, Ann, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm going to start off by giving you sort of an overview of TEDCO via our website, because this is really the place to go to get detailed information on all of our programs. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see it.
Yep.
Great. Okay, so this is TEDCO's website. This is like the first place you want to go to really gain access and information to all of TEDCO's programs. And just to give you a little background, TEDCO was founded or created, I should say, by the state of Maryland over 20 years ago. And it's really was created to provide funding, resources, and connections to early stage technology and also life science companies. If you had to kind of just look at a bird's eye view of TEDCO, we're sort of divided into 3 different areas. We've got one section of TEDCO that's focused on tech transfer. That's tech transfer out of universities and out of the federal sector. We have another group that's focused on funding, and we do everywhere from pre-seed funding all the way up to Series A. And then we have this middle section that Brittany and I are part of, and that's called our advisory services. By the way, it might be getting a new name somewhere in the near future, but for right now, we're called advisory services. And I want to show you sort of some of the resources that fall under advisory services by clicking on this link right here and letting you see this drop-down menu. Under this area, we have access to business resources. You can access databases to do research on. We've got a wide range of different online resources and links to other resources. We have roundtables that cover everything from artificial intelligence to health tech. We even have a women's roundtable, and that's more for peer mentoring. And we have a rural business innovation initiative focused on that, companies that are outside of the city area. But we also have network advisors. In fact, we have 2 of them here today that recently introduced themselves. And our network advisor program is designed to provide entrepreneurs with more detailed mentoring. You can actually go through our website, click on a link, and actually request a network advisor, and we'll try to match somebody to you that shares perhaps your industry expertise, but also has specific expertise in one of many areas that you might need assistance with. That might be intellectual property assistance or assistance in customer discovery or any other kind of area that you might be looking for more information or help. And then we also have the Prelude pitch, which Brittany described earlier, and that's what brings us all here today. So highly encourage you to go on the website. You can take a look at the different funding programs. We also have a Get Started section where you can actually score yourself on where you are in the stage of your development. And then there's this insights page that has a lot more information about TEDCO and sort of different partnerships and different communities and things like that that we've done work with, as well as our sort of some of our mission statements and things like that. And then under news and events, definitely check out our newsletter page right here and sign up for our newsletter. This is the way to really get connected to what's going on in the ecosystem and stay up to date on the latest, greatest stuff. So all you have to do is hit subscribe now and you will be on the list and you will be getting information on our ecosystem and what's going on. And there's a lot of new initiatives, by the way, planned for next year that you'll want to be aware of. So again, highly recommend you do that. And with that said, we'll go ahead and get started.
Great, thanks, Ann. Okay, Patrick, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure thing. Definitely don't mind going first. That kind of appears to be my thing here. So
again.
It is a yellow vest. I gotta stop
It's
here.
okay. And I left it totally up to Brittany, so you can't blame me on this one, man.
All right, gotcha, man. Okay, let me get prepared. I definitely wasn't prepared.
Oh, I have to make you co-host, I think. One second.
All right, there we
Make
go.
sure you can share the screen.
So no, I'm not gonna be doing slides. I'm gonna just kind of, kind of do it the way I've been doing it, just trying to make it a real conversational and personal. I feel like I've had a lot more success that way. So before we kind of get to the meat and potato of things, can you guys all hear me clearly? I just want to make sure. All right, wonderful. So my name's Patrick, and I want to thank everybody for coming today. And I'm really, really super stoked about the TEDCO opportunity. When I had first started, I must have sent you guys like 50 unsolicited cold pitches and emails via like LinkedIn. So to actually be here today is like, wow, it was really cool. But ignore those pitches because I was new. So just throw them in the trash because this is the one I want to use, the one I'm saying today. So as we've kind of been doing this cohort, as a founder, I have not done as well as I've liked with these pitches and haven't been too happy about it. And I couldn't really understand why. And just through reviewing the film and just looking at my overall performance, I started to really realize that the why I hadn't been doing a good job really came down to Super's why, like why we do this. And I hadn't really touched on that. And I wanted to share it with you guys briefly before I got into things. I wanted to share a quick story with you. Earlier this year in February, prior to me resigning as a bus operator, for the people who aren't familiar, I used to be a driver for the MTA. Did it for 10 years, love it. It was one of the best and probably more fun jobs I've ever had. But one day I was browsing on my phone with my oldest boy, Patrick III, and we were looking through old pictures. And in browsing these pictures, he had asked me a question. It was a crazy question. He said, do you have any clothes? And I said, well, Patrick, what do you mean? Why are you asking me that? And he said, do you have any real clothes? Because you have your uniform on in every single picture. And I kind of laughed about it. And I said, well, yeah, of course I have clothes. I just happen to work a lot. The uniform's kind of my lifestyle. And he understood. He was like, I know, Dad. That's why I don't really ask you to, kind of hang out because I know you're always busy at work. And in full transparency, that's probably when Super was ultimately born in that conversation. If you look around us, whether you're driving up the road or if you're just on the internet, you'll see that there are plenty of now hiring signs. There are plenty of recruitment campaigns. There are plenty of advertisements targeted at CDL holders and in a sense trying to get them to sign up for these jobs. Look no further than myself. I'm a CDL holder with technically no real employer per se. So what's the problem? There are plenty of drivers. There are plenty of businesses. Why aren't they connecting? Is it that the companies can't efficiently hire? Why are the current employees not coming to work? Is it the $10,000 that it roughly takes to hire someone Or is it the 45-day onboarding process? Maybe it's too long, or maybe it's too short. Maybe these businesses actually like spending an astronomical amount of overtime while their customers kind of suffer from the understaffing. In looking at all of that, I'd challenge everyone. I'd like to ask you, what if we could consider that none of that was actually the problem? The problem is time. When a parent is rushing to pick their child up from daycare and their scheduled bus doesn't show up due to a driver call out, what's really the issue? Is the issue that the bus just isn't going to show up? That's not the issue. The bus will eventually get there and they'll eventually get to their destination. But the issue isn't that. The issue in that particular circumstance is time. Now, sure, in theory and in tagline, Super is a marketplace to help short-staffed transportation entities connect with safe, qualified commercial drivers, whether it's on-demand, short-term, or long-term. And the 20% transaction fee is kind of cool. You know, it's a proven and viable business model. And not to mention the 20% we take is actually lower than all of our competitors. But when you strip all of that away, what really is Superb? Superb was my personal solution to finding ways to have more time with my kids. By empowering drivers, giving them the freedom of time and choice, we can create a more flexible market that fits all commercial drivers. And in return, this gives businesses an abundant pool of safe, qualified drivers so they can reduce their overtime, they can increase their revenue, and they can save money and time on hiring campaigns, all while providing a more reliable product to their customers, regardless of the potential vehicle type. Now, you may be wondering, like, you know, why hasn't this been done before? And if it has, what actually makes Superb different? What's our proverbial secret sauce in this instance? In a market with heavy hitters like Uber Freight and million-dollar funded startups like Relay on Demand and Fleet and Pro, how does Superb actually stand out? Our competitors have a very heavy and laser focus on the over-the-road truck industry. And while that's great, our mission at Superb is slightly different. Our goal is to create an opportunity for all drivers, all businesses, all license types, all vehicle types, not just Class 8s. In addition to that, our current team's actually composed of all frontline transportation employees, people who have not just necessarily worked in this industry, but have actually lived it. It's all they really know. We all have the same goal because we've all had the same struggle and challenge of not having enough time home. Not to mention, we don't mind getting our hands dirty in the trenches. As of today, we've made nearly $3,000 just with 5 drivers just hustling on Craigslist and the Nextdoor website. You don't have a specific axe in this pitch, rather than just asking for people to share their network and connection with us to help us make transportation more transparent, a world where drivers and businesses actually just work together. In closing, I'd like to ask you to challenge the status quo and rethink what actually is innovation. How did Uber innovate rides when cabs and regular transportation already existed? How did Netflix innovate movies and entertainment when things like theaters and other entertainment vessels were available at a dime a dozen? And it brought me to a point to think, well, maybe innovation really isn't a crazy app or a humongous tech computer somewhere in Silicon Valley. At its core, maybe innovation is just humans finding simple ways to give other humans the one thing they can buy, and that's time. Thank you for the opportunity. And is there any questions? Okay. And that'll be all. Cool. Let me get my pen here.
So Patrick, could you be more specific as to what it is your product is and what it is you are asking for resources for?
Sure. So we're an online marketplace that connects businesses to commercial drivers. So picture a website like Airbnb, or even a different variation of things like Tasker or Upwork, whereas our focus is just on drivers. So we're kind of in the gig space. with things like fiber and such, except we have a focus just on people with commercial licenses.
So you are looking, these are principally, you say drivers, could you be, so I'll give you a little bit of feedback and question in this thing. You are assuming that I understand or know anything about your industry, and that is, I don't know anything. You know, I know about Uber, that's about it. Are you cargo? Are you passenger? Tell me a little bit about the drivers and the client that you're looking to address, and what is your competition with that? I'm a little not sure.
Sure thing. So we serve all vehicle modes. So we still do the Class A's, which are the big combination vehicles. That's a truck with the trailer attached to it. And from there, we handle Class C's, Class B's. Those licenses cover everything from buses, trash trucks, flat trucks, tow trucks, pretty much anything that's actually not a combination vehicle in a car, kind of lies in that middle. So where our competitors, companies like Uber Freight, Relay On Demand, Fleeting Pro, they have a focus and a mission to just focus on over-the-road trucks that go from state to state, whereas Super, we handle all license types, whether you have a Class B or a Class A.
Okay, I'll let others ask some questions. So, and you need to tell me a little bit about your cost structure. You mentioned that you said you had 5 people and you had gathered $3,000. Tell me a little bit about, is that your gross? I mean, tell me a little bit about your cost structure and what that means.
So we make 20% every time a driver in a business connects. So to actually sign up and browse and use the platform is actually free. We only take a transaction, i.e. a commission fee, when a business actually solicits the services of every driver. The drivers are allowed to place themselves on the platform at a per hour rate of what they feel they want and or deserve. And at that point, whatever the business agrees to, from a per hour standpoint, however the business agrees to book them, we get 20% of that rate. So for example, when we did orders last week, if a driver's booked at roughly $200, $25 an hour over 8 hours, we get 20% of the driver's pay for that particular assignment. So of the 3,000 that we've made up to this point, Superb profits 20% of that.
Okay. And how would you use the funds? What are you looking to raise funds for?
So if we were to raise more capital, I think we could have a really big opportunity to advertise. I think that just in my experience, there's not really enough advertising on things like social media, Google, YouTube, more modern ways to get drivers in seats and to introduce businesses to our platform and let them know, like, hey, I drove past this sign that said you guys are hiring. Did you know, like, you can get a driver from your computer or your cell phone in less than a minute if you would like to. So with any funds that I'd actually raise, it probably would be dedicated to advertising to drivers, letting them know, like, hey guys, there's this cool new way to make money. There's a way to get more time. There's a way to be a commercial driver and still have your freedom. And businesses, hey, you don't have to do expensive campaigns or recruiting. You can literally visit Super and get a driver in less than a minute.
So your business is the platform, not running a transportation company per se.
Yes.
Okay. Patrick, this is Tanya. Do you screen your drivers? How do you manage the driver pool? What's the process in becoming a driver? How do I get to sign up?
Yeah, sure thing. So as of right now, we're invite only because we're new. I wanted to be really particular about who we have on board. So as of right now, the current drivers we have are old people I've worked with in the industry and stuff like that. People I know who, I can trust as we build this up and try to become more credible in the market. But as we expand and we try to get, in a sense, quote unquote, strangers on the platform, we just have a series of questions we ask them. In addition, we require every driver to submit a driver record. In Baltimore, from the NBA. They submit one every 30 days, and we look for things like points, moving violations, DUIs, things of that nature, to make sure we get the absolute best of the best. And that's just a simple app. We ask them questions about How do you feel about, if you're a bus guy, how do you feel about passengers? How do you feel about customers? How do you feel about transportation abroad? We kind of believe here that it's very easy to teach someone how to drive, but it's hard to teach them how to like people. So when we screen people, in addition to the driving record, we look for people who have, I guess they just like people. They have a backing in customer service and they know how to work with customers on an individual basis. But it's invite only, so our drivers can recruit other drivers just for the time being.
Mm-hmm. And I guess is the onus in terms of liability and or insurance that is the responsibility of the company who brings on this driver?
Yes. So as of right now, when a business comes on board or they hire one of our supers, the company assumes liability on things like insurance of that nature. We have a separate program called Super Partners, and that's where we work with, for example, bigger companies, things like government, stuff like that, where they require a lot more groundwork in order to be able to use the process. And at that point, we have our own personal vendors so we can reach out to for things like, okay, hey, this particular client wants us to have the insurance, or this particular entity wants us to do this or us to do that. But as it stands right now, the local, small companies that we work with cover the insurance for our drivers in their vehicles.
And even when you take your 20% cut, is that still allowing the driver to have a market rate hourly salary with the 20%?
Yes, it does. One of the ways we accomplish that is by allowing them to set their own rates. So if a driver on our platform wants to charge $30 an hour, he's definitely free to do that. If they want to charge $25 an hour, they can. The market rate in Baltimore City is actually $18 an hour for drivers. So when we launched our software, we actually put it in the back end that none of the drivers on Super in the Baltimore market can actually make under $18 an hour. And that's with our commission rate. And that's at the absolute worst.
Patrick, this is Ann. Do you have a pitch deck?
I do. It's very wordy. I used it the very first time we were practicing these pitches. The reception was okay, but it was not well. The second and third time, it was more of a conversational tone where I wasn't so focused on reading my slides. So at that point, I kind of said, well, okay, I've had more success with just kind of talking and trying to be honest in what we do and how we got there rather than just kind of reading my slides, because I haven't really presented much with that deck. So I wasn't really, not necessarily familiar with the information, but the actual skill of pitching from this presentation deck and things like that. So we do have one. I haven't used it in our last two pitches.
Hey,
and it's Deb again, but in defense of the AB program and John, who ran the program, we did very much stress Jason Tagler's pitch creator and working through that. So it's been part of the program.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate that, Deb. This is Troy Stovall. Patrick, I think I get it. And Deb, I'd like to learn more about the program you're talking about. I think the questions that you're hearing are, at the end of the day, I tell folks all the time, I've been doing this for a minute, and there's an axiom in venture capital that goes, you always invest in A quality people that have a B quality plan, and never the reverse. You never invest in B quality people with A quality plan, because you can never make it work. You never can make money or make it work. And your passion is off the chain. You got tons of passion, and you have a very compelling story. So I think what I'm hearing, and from the questions from Valerie and from Tanya and from Ann, is how do we hone that story down, and how do we make it impactful, and how do we get to the point of we understand, what's the business? Because at the end of the day, there's a question. There's three questions. What's the real problem you're trying to solve? Who wants to buy that? And at what price point do they want to buy that? And how do you make money doing that? And for you to be able to take that passion and boil that down into answering those really tight questions, because here you kind of frankly have a friendly audience. But part of the job we're trying to do for you is not only get you ready for us, but get you ready for those audience that frankly may not be as friendly and may not frankly want to hear all the background information. They just want to hear, what's the story? How am I going to make money? And what are you here for today? And so you got to also understand the audiences. This is communications 101. This is for all of you. This is a friendly audience you have today, and so we're here to try to help and make you better. But there's going to be moments in time as you scale up that you're not going to be, frankly, in a friendly audience, and you got to be ready for that.
And Troy, just to add to what you were saying, a great good friend of mine who formerly president of Kaufman Foundation and entrepreneur himself, talked to our AD class last year because he wrote a book called Burn the Business Plan, what all great entrepreneurs do. But he said, you bet on the jockey, not the horse.
Amen. Absolutely correct.
Yep.
Absolutely correct. And so your passion, Patrick, and I'm sure others are off the chain. And so for us, my job is to help you focus that passion so that it becomes something that, because I think in your head, you got the idea and it makes sense to you. I think as Valerie tried to point out, you know, you got to understand that not everybody's going to understand your business. They may get your passion, but they're not going to understand your business. So you got to assume that people are not going to get your business, and you got to explain that to them.
Well, I'd like to add a little bit about that. So I mentioned that my background is in investment banking. So I'm a numbers person. And so when you throw out a number and you said, I made $3,000 and there were the 5 of us, of course, you know, and I took 20%, of course, I immediately, you know, did my calculation and realized that that's $15,000 of gross income. You let me come to my own vision of, was that $15,000 a week, a month? And so I agree about the passion, but I will tell you as the analyst who would be sitting there, I need to understand your numbers. And when you're asking me for money, then you need to explain to me how that money is being, those revenues and expenses are being coming together. And at some point, you know, at this point, you're asking for a grant. As you advance, the investor is going to be looking for a return on his or her investment. So you've got to, I understand you're nervous about putting a pitch. I say you have to have the pitch. You may not have to show it, but you need to know it well enough that, you know, different people have different styles, but you have to have that pitch that you start from, that you have internalized, that incorporates, I'm sure, all the things that your program has told you about. And as I said, having people like myself who are the numbers person, you've got to be able to explain it. And if we're going to go feedback, did you realize that you introduced yourself as Patrick and you never gave your last name or your business name until 2 minutes into your presentation? So, you know, this is a 10-minute pitch, but there are others, people, you know, I'm sure they'll tell you people's attention span after 3 minutes is gone. Right. So if you don't hit them with your name, your business, and something that makes me want to listen to the other 7 minutes, as Troy said, we are an amenable crowd. Another crowd after 3 minutes may have turned off.
To weigh in on that too, I was going to get there, but to again, it's Deb. I'm sorry, but as this crowd and the audience, it is an absolute rarity that Ann and I are the only minorities. It's usually the reverse, right? The friendly crowd, when you go out there to pitch, this is not the audience that you would normally get.
Absolutely.
Sad but true, and again, we're trying to work on that too. But a sad but true point. And the other thing, Patrick, 'cause I don't want you to feel beat up here, because I think what I want to leave you with is.
No, you're good. I'm taking notes.
I want you to find a way to weave your passion into the story, as opposed to telling the backup story and then getting to the business. I want you to weave that in. And so to me, it would have been better to Valerie's point, is to weave the passion and the background story into the storytelling about the business. Because at the end of the day, we're here to fund a company and to make your company successful. Let's just be blunt. That's the point. Right?
You know, Patrick, also one thing I wanted to mention, man, is that the deck that you've done wasn't that bad, right? That you should, like everyone else, continue to improve on that deck with each pitch. one of the things a deck does, it allows you to focus on those things. So for example, you know, when you were talking about the cost structure, the core value proposition that you talked about to me was that, you know, one thing was you get to reduce the amount of overtime that a company is spending. You're talking about a need and a pain point that you're actually solving for. And so sometimes by having a simple slide, it lets that be said, and then your passion can go in any direction you want. But to do it without a deck, then you don't wind up solidifying those key points that you're trying to leave the audience with. And so it seemed like things around that, your structure, you know, your team, your growth, the markets you're penetrating, where you're going first, what your core value proposition is, the pain that you're solving, those kinds of basic things that you get to put on a slide deck. You don't have to have a bunch of words on it. Even if it's just that phrase, it allows you to focus on that topic. And so you don't rely upon the deck, but it does help you to really streamline your pitch. I would ask you to go back to your deck. It was a good deck, and just add the little bits here and there that, you know, incorporate what you're hearing today, but use your deck. There's no reason why you shouldn't be.
And just to add to that, most people are visual learners.
Mhm.
So if you do have a visual, it's easier for them to follow along with, you know, your storyline. And it's easier for you to also highlight points in your pitch with just a few words. And if you're saying it in those few words and they're seeing it, it's going to resonate with them more as well.
Got it. Thank you.
And the last thing on that, back to the deck, you got to remember, as those of us that do this, you know, I might hear in any one day 10, 12 different pitches, and I'm not going to remember everything. And so I'm going to take that physical deck. That physical deck is the one thing, though, I am going to take back and have that as my memory, and it will act as I think as has been said, as a trigger, as John was saying, as a trigger of something that you may have said. Because remember, we're not going to be in the Zoom space. At least I hope we're not going to be in the Zoom space forever. And so at some point,
Yeah, right, really.
we're going to be doing these things face to face. And so they won't be recorded. And all you're going to have is the notes that person takes and that physical document that you're going to leave them with.
Patrick, one last thing I'd like to say too. Tanya brought up the very thing that you and I talked about last, which was the process of screening drivers and the concern that I have around liability, not just with driving records, but also criminal background checks and other things of that nature. And so, you know, those kinds of things that you're hearing over and over that are coming up about, you know, before it was in the early stages was about, well, what about unions and collective bargaining agreements with drivers, and how is that going to work? Then we talk about the insurance questions and how that's going to work. So for you, screening is going to be really important. You're the marketplace that is making this available, putting someone in that seat, in that business. And so your liability protection is important. I think you really need to hone in on these kinds of comments and use that as the kind of talking points that you want to include in your deck, so that those objections that are in our heads already are being dealt with in the front end instead of coming up in the Q&A.
Now, just for my notes, do you guys feel like, you know, the things that we talk about as far as the potential drawbacks or red flags, do you think that's an area I need to attack or get out in front of in the actual pitch? Or should that be a, hey, I'll take questions after?
I'm just saying it's part of your process. And when you're saying how are you going to, your marketplace, you want to say you're providing safe drivers and with good records. And one thing to be nice to people, it's another thing to have liability insurance, right? So I'm just saying you just, you know, these are questions that come up every time you've pitched. So, you know, let's address it. Let's just include it. I mean, it's coming up every time.
Yeah.
I think, Patrick, I haven't seen your deck, but you keep saying that you have a lot of words on it. So if you think about the most important things, if you're reading your deck and you're looking at it and it has a bunch of words, what are the top 3 things that I would want to know that's in all those words, right? So if you were just talking about the whole issue with your drivers, what would I want to know about your drivers? They get screened. I do criminal background checks. Liability is on the onus of the company, and you know I get driver records. Just those 3, 4 things, bullets on a slide on a deck. In terms of the value proposition, when you're talking about, you know, and to Valerie's earlier point, you were so far into it, I kind of didn't understand what it is you were offering. But when you talk about value proposition, and I think John just said that, there's a lot of overtime. Well, that got lost in all this,
Right.
that saving the overtime. But if you had a deck and you just said, here's why companies would be interested. They spend over $5 billion a year in
Right.
overtime for drivers. I didn't know that. Well, okay, well, that's a market. Right now there's over 14,000 open CDL positions. Okay,
Right.
I didn't know that there was a market. So those things that help you talk about it, it's the story that you tell that is wonderful, but I'm going to need some data and a couple more facts to let me know that your story is viable. So as you're telling your story, just to be able to refer to a slide and go, yes, I want my drivers. One key thing that sort of differentiates us is that our drivers love people. However, they're safe. We do background checks, this, that. The other thing is that, we're making it easy for companies to come and hire our drivers, but I'm saving them a ton of money. They do spend this much on overtime. They spend this much on this. There are 14,000 open positions. Just give me some facts to bolster your story, and then it's good. The story is great, but without the data, I'm going to say, well, okay, I don't know it like you know it. You know it like at the back of your hand because this is what you're doing. But for me, this is a totally new industry. I don't know anything about it. So having those bullet points, go back through your deck and look where all those words are. Just give me the bullets, the facts, the data that actually validate what you're telling me. And then you're good.
No, thank you.
Excellent.
Okay, well, that's the end of the feedback section. So thank you, Patrick. You did a great job. We also just had Mac join, which he's an advisor. Mac, do you want to introduce yourself?
How's it going, everybody?
Hey.
Matt Bonwell. I'm two-time entrepreneur, software engineer by trade. I used to work at TEDCO. I started off on the seed investment team. I helped lead the initiative that now is known as the Builder Fund. And then I also worked with Ann and Brittany on the network advisories team. So this feels like old times. So happy to be here and looking forward to seeing some pitches.
Great. Thanks for
Thanks for
joining,
coming.
Mac.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next company. Nika, would you mind going next?
No problem.
Do you have a deck?
I do have a deck.
Okay, I'm gonna make you co-host.
Okay. All right. All right, can you all see my screen?
Not yet. Yes.
There we go.
All right.
Excellent.
Good morning. I'm Nika Namdi, creator of Fight Blight Be More, where we envision transforming data, decision-making, and community like butterflies. Let's go on a brief journey. Imagine your 7-year-old self riding down the street with your friends. As you ride past blocks and blocks of this. Vacant houses, doors and windows broken, trees growing up inside. To any kid, but especially to children who have, especially to those who have little access to recreation space, this could seem like a playland, but in fact, it's a toxic wasteland. A similar scene, Mother's Day weekend 2016, accelerated my research of blight, vacancy, population loss, real estate development, and much more. I learned that Baltimore City has a problem with blight. Blight is the presence of vacant, abandoned, dilapidated, underutilized, and misutilized structures, especially in concentrations in communities. But how did some neighborhoods become so blighted? In short, racism is the reason, and its impacts are clear. Dr. Coco said, if you have to walk past 29 vacant properties to get to school, you've already failed the first grade. Because taking the walk-in school bus through a blighted community to school can damage a child's sense of self-esteem. The loss of population caused by blight erodes the social, emotional fabric of people and communities. Blight is experienced as trauma. The physical health impacts like elevated heart rates are a sign of chronic stress. explaining the 20-year difference in life expectancy between Roland Park and Sandtown, Winchester. The economic damage caused by blight can be seen in the losses of home values. The average home value in Baltimore is $157,000, whereas in Maryland it's $292,000. Baltimore city government spends $36.3 million in direct costs addressing blight and loses $51.9 million in property tax revenue. Residents, advocacy and community groups, researchers, municipalities, nor developers have an analytic tool to identify, report, track, and analyze data on blighted property that supports blight remediation or equitable development. There are many desperate data stores containing data on blighted properties, but the access, availability, authenticity, and accuracy of these data stores are in question. Also, the analysis of data in these stores often reflect algorithms of oppression and pathologizes the ways of being and resistance of Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color. Our solution is an analytic platform that combines crowdsourced data with municipal and other publicly available blight data that enables identification, reporting, tracking, and analyzing data on blighted properties that is easily accessible to users, supports accountability for property owners and government, and is accurate to support data-driven decision-making and equitable community vision-led and owned blight remediation and community development projects. The data collected by users will be combined and pooled with the many publicly available data sources from SSTAT to BINA, organized to support analysis to answer a variety of questions, like which houses should be developed first to stabilize surrounding communities? Where are the concentrations of evictions happening? Who actually owns a property? Or was that report of illegal dumping actually cleaned up? To answer these questions and more, Fight Blight Be More will be offered as a subscription-based service. Currently, we have designed 9 subscriptions, including a general developer subscription, an eviction tracker, a ownership verification, and a 311 audit subscription. The estimated total addressable market for just the general developer subscription is $950,000 to $210 million. We anticipate signing up 10% of the 950 local developers in Maryland by year 2 and growing steadily from there. The subscription base is varied from developers to researchers to the municipalities themselves. The demand for data-driven solutions for blight has produced several applications. Our data curation, customization, and contextualization separates us from the rest. For this investment round, we are seeking to raise $250,000 to support beta app development, analytic research, and micro development projects. Using the funds, we plan to launch the full version of the app in Q3 of 2021. We couldn't have gotten this far without our community of advisors, powered by connection, the technology of culture, and our lived experience to unblight the block. Beyond developing the analytic platform, we reach around community to support those living with blight to imagine and innovate solutions for remediation, from hosting hood hikes to community development hackathons to launching a Hack Hub, a youth-focused, community-centered imagination, innovation, and incubation space in a formerly blighted property. Fight Blight Be More is curating development that will build beloved community. A blighted Baltimore is a bleeding and broke Baltimore. It is our goal to turn a blighted city into a more beloved one. We reimagine the butterflies in Baltimore and beyond. How can you too? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We can go to Q&A now.
Okay, I'll go first. Okay. You started out with blight is a result of racism. That was I think that was your beginning proposition. I would say jumping to that when you're given who you're pitching to is an interesting first step out. And then you never spoke to the lack of access to capital as being a major problem. So once people have this information, how do you get them to use it to address moderate and low income housing versus a developer using I saw your pricing and it went by really quickly. What would stop a developer from using this information to say, oh, I can go buy land cheap here and build, high-rise, high-income housing and displace the people who live there? So I'm a little questioning about the economic model that you're using behind your hypothesis here, because blight is a large result of people not having access to capital, and which is a result of racism. But you sort of stepped through that. And then you didn't say how you would differentiate from developers using this information and this database to increase the very thing that has caused blight in the first place.
So one of the things, I didn't drill down into the connection between racism and the lack of capital simply for time, right? Because in this particular pitch was developed for 5 minutes, which makes it a little bit difficult to pull that thread through. But specifically, the data is that the way we are developing our analytics is so that the data is contextualized in ways or curated in ways that fight inequity. And so by that, when I say that the general developer subscription will help developers figure out which neighborhoods they should be developing in order to stabilize communities, I don't mean the what is behind the scenes will do it in a way that does not push for displacement. And part of this has to do with how the communities themselves are engaging in the development process. And one of the things that's happening in Baltimore is many of the communities have master plans, and the developers, doesn't matter what developer kind of plan they create, if they're not engaging with the community in order to execute those plans can't come into fruition. And so that is how the app is designed differently, matching folks with those community groups so that the community groups can express their plans for the community, not the developers just executing whatever their particular plan is, right? And displacement is always going to be a challenge to fight when you're dealing with blight remediation projects. And so I'm not saying that it's here it will completely mitigate that, but we have the idea of using the community organization's master plan as a part of the metrics.
I'll let others go ahead and speak, but my question is, you didn't address how the community plans would have access to capital to do so now they have the information of where the blighted property is. How do you make sure that that those who have that information now use that information not to continue the, Jared Kushner is a huge developer in Baltimore and would use this information to say, oh, I left 10 blocks that I didn't buy, let me go in and buy it. Or how do you make sure that the community group has the capital to do what Jared Kushner wanted to do? I understand how you get the data, and I could see how subscribers would use it and you could make money, but I don't see how that would result in the end product being, not removal of people and just moving the blight around. That's what I'm not understanding how that works.
Right. So the piece that's missing is that the community groups, their plans are coded into, like, what they want for their community is going to be coded into that general developer subscription based on the master plans that a particular community has. So the developers would be matched with those properties, with those communities, based on how the developers ideals match up with the community's ideals. Right. So I can't help if somebody is a predatory developer. I can't necessarily help that. But what I can do is match developers with communities that have similar ideals. Right. So if a developer is about making sure that legacy homeowners stay in place by, protecting their roof lines or providing them with other services that will help them age in space, then I can match that developer with communities that have that baked into their master plan. So if a developer doesn't have those equitable ideals, it's likely that they wouldn't be matched with any community. In that particular situation, for that particular analytic, they wouldn't be matched with any community at all because those ideals don't match, aren't in alignment, if that makes sense.
Can I add to what Valerie was talking about, Nika? I think, the subscriber slide did go by fast, but one of the things that this comment raises to me is that, maybe we ought to spend a little more time talking about the other types of subscribers, right? I mean, you have municipalities that are doing eviction sheriff's departments that are using this data. And so it didn't come across clearly who those subscribers were. And you wind up having this conversation about it's all about developers taking over the community, when what you've done is you have pulled together multiple data sets to make municipalities actually operate more efficiently by being able to do that, by bringing life to the 311 system, by having an eviction tracker with the sheriff's department, by having one place that you can get all of the ownership information about a particular property that even the city doesn't have all of that information in one place. And so it just seems like what is coming out with with Valerie's comment is that she missed your other sort of target customers in those subscriber models. And so it's not, and you speak about just developers, but you really didn't say much about the demand of municipalities that has in many ways driven you to build this, right? That you see the shortcomings, the city sees the shortcomings. You've been communicating with city officials for 2 years. Well, let's hear that. Let's hear that part of the story too.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have helped Valerie a little bit in terms of just understanding where you were going with it and who was your real buyers and why they would spend $100,000 a year on information like that. So just wanted to, make sure you talk about that pain point that those municipalities and those others have already shared with you in your customer discovery relating to why having all the data in one spot is a good thing and why they'll pay for it.
Okay.
40 seconds for one more question.
Just real quick, Nika, can you tell us more about your background and what made you interested in solving this problem?
Sure. So I live in Upton, which is one of Baltimore's most blighted communities. And I look at my neighborhood on a daily basis, walking, driving through, and really having seen what could have been a dangerous situation with the young people on the bikes, because that actually happened. I started kind of researching and figuring out why those properties were being demolished, why they were in such bad condition, why, Upton and Harlem Park have such concentrations of Black. And as a systems engineer for the last almost 21 years, I figured that there was definitely a systems approach, and even that there was some software that could be applied, software technology that could be applied in a way that would help community understand the data and have access to the data so that they could go and speak truth to what is now, or those who are now in power.
Yeah, that's great, by the way. And
Exactly.
I think it's important for you to tell more about your background, maybe even at the very beginning, to catch people's attention, because your expertise really lends itself to solving this problem, and getting people to better understand that expertise up front will let them listen in to you as an expert on this kind of subject matter. And in addition to that, by the way, I think we're in the feedback session, so I just want to start out by saying great looking slides and great looking logo. It really was very refreshing to see some nice looking slides there, and the way you graphically presented the problem. Always room for improvement, but I think you're really off to a strong start on that front. But I think your storytelling up front was pretty good, but you could keep fine tuning that. I love the competitor slide and the way you presented that information. I think getting back to kind of the points that Valerie was making earlier, is just, it would be better to understand sort of the, how this is being utilized in the middle. And then also think about the data. There's a lot of power behind this data that you're gathering. And there may even be, if you there's an AI angle to this as well, because you can, with enough data, you can actually generate some predictive analytics. And those predictive analytics might be able to spot neighborhoods that aren't blighted yet, but could be soon, or are on the pathway to that, and letting people know that up front. It's almost like climate change. If you can address it early on, because you have enough of the data, you can start to begin to mitigate it up front.
Great point.
Yeah, I was going to suggest similarly the data, when developers go in, they spend a lot of time, like Opportunity Zone, and then there was a municipal governments, in order to get from municipal finance, you have to have 20% set asides, and, low income. They spend a lot of time finding those projects in those communities that address those governmental requirements. So this could work one of two ways. You could lobby the governments to have greater requirements, so that you preclude some people from coming into the neighborhood who you don't want, by making the hurdles higher, and or giving developers, this is a prime neighborhood where you could have a mixed use product, the 20, they have all kinds of government. So I think maybe what you also want to do in your database is to link into some of the existing governmental programs that developers and others have to use in order to gain access to municipal governments. And so, opposed to it being pushed from the community groups, it could be, if you want to do business in Baltimore, the Baltimore zoning says that you have to have X, Y, and Z, and you begin to gives you more value add to both sides of the communities, the developers as well as the end users. So I would encourage you to increase your database with some of that knowledge as well.
And so to jump in here, to give some feedback directly on the pitch, you have a good story up front, but it's a little disjointed. You can tighten it and make it more seamless. You also mentioned there was a specific date where this problem became a bigger issue for you, but you didn't go into detail of what happened during that date that made the problem a bigger issue. Like, you left me hanging. I was like, what was the date? What happened during that date? The other thing is, as you showed your slides, you do have really beautiful slides, but what you speak to doesn't speak to what's on your slide. So you have a slide early on in the deck that has a lot of great numbers on it, but you don't really talk to any of those numbers. So like, I'm reading the statistics on the slide while trying to hear the pitch, and it was throwing me off, because I just knew you were going to tell me at least one or two of those numbers, and I think you said one of them, but like, the slide was so compelling, I wanted you to hit those numbers. So be careful when you're using that, because at the end of the day, we use bullet points in our slides so people pay attention to us and not the slide. But when you have big compelling numbers there, that is going to draw people's attention, right? So you want to make sure you're able to hit those things. Also, you talked about your different subscription models. You said you're going to have 9 and you showed 3. Underneath of the 3, it would be nice to just have the range of the smallest subscription to the largest subscription. That way we can see what the full range is, even though you're not going to display all 9. You also got to your financial model slide. On your financial slide, you go from 45 subscribers to 90 to 100 plus. Well, 90 to 100 doesn't look large. So be careful of that, even though you have the 100 plus. The other problem is you gave me number of subscribers, you can give me a dollar amount, right? And for a financial slide, I'm gonna want to understand the dollar. I understand every subscriber is going to come in at a different range, but because you're at this early of a stage, all you really need to be able to have is a core assumption, right? So you should have a core assumption of what you think the average value of a subscriber is going to be, and use the average value for your financial slide. So you can show number of subscribers, and underneath of you can show what that equates to dollars, right? And that's purely from, an investment standpoint. Your product's very poised not only to get investment, but also get a lot of philanthropic dollars. So like, I understand the ability to balance both of those, right? But to the point that was made earlier, understanding the audience who's listening when you pitch, Accelerate Baltimore is going to be a little interesting because you're going to have a mixed bag. Other places is going to be usually one or the other, right? And so your language is also going to impact the community of folks who are listening at the time, right? So just keep that in mind as you go. So yeah, there was some notes I saw as you were going through and pitching.
Yeah, that impact slide was, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tanya, please.
I was going to say, I think one helpful hint might be to also just upfront, because the data that you have solves for so many things. And you talk about it from the Blight perspective, but if you could just maybe even list out all the things that you're solving for, right? Because all of the things all of the information that it gives you, that it prevents other things from happening. And it would be good, and then I think it would keep people from going down the developer path if you opened up and said that this solves for this. While Blight was the impetus for me walking through my neighborhood and seeing these, abandoned properties, and I wanted to fix that. But once I got into it, I understood that once I identified and put this data into place, it also solves for evictions and this and equity. And if you could say that this is just a solution, that the core thing is looking at the blight. But when I look at the ripple effect of the blight, if you had something that showed the ripple effect of all the things that it actually touches, then I think people understand that it's more than just about the developers coming in and getting it. It has so much more about community empowerment and equity and investment and all those. If you just had like a little circle with blight in the middle and then show how it just kind of goes expand the ripple effect of what you're doing, then people really understand your value proposition a little bit better, because it's more than just blight. But I think you have to either say that or show that in some kind, illustrate that in some kind of way, that this really has an enormous effect on the community in multiple different ways, depending on who has the data.
How long was that, Brittany?
9.
It was 9?
Yeah.
Her pitch?
Oh, no. Her pitch was 6 minutes.
6, okay. Okay. All right. So let me just ask you myself, Brittany, when you have a pitch opportunity for 10 minutes, is there an expectation in TEDCO that you use all 10 minutes, or when you end at 6 minutes, does that say something to you? What's the feedback on that?
Yeah, I would say it's best when you use the full 10 minutes or you're a little bit under. That way we know that you've used the time, as much as possible. But I mean, Ann, would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, having pitched before at the 1 minute, the 3 minute, the 5
Yeah,
minute,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
want
yeah.
to, be able to at least maximize your story. Yeah, if you find that you can say your story in less time, that's fine. You just don't want to leave anything on the table that you could have said that didn't say. Sometimes that you're in a competition situation too, so you want to make sure you get your best foot forward, in those environments. But I would say, having kind of some knowledge of some new platforms that are going to be out there in this community, have everybody start working on a 3-minute pitch. There's some new things that are going to be launched in the Baltimore, Maryland area in the coming months, and they're putting a time restriction of 3 minutes on those platforms.
Wow.
So as you're developing your pitch, think about how you can maximize it in 3 minutes, and then add the gravy and the time beyond that.
My general feedback, even though I'm no longer at TEDCO, I'll jump in here. I would say it doesn't matter so much if you come under time, as long as you hit all the key points, right? Like if you have 10 minutes, but you come under time and you don't talk about your competitors, then you missed out, right? Or if you don't talk about, like, the more time you have, that means the more time you have to hit all the key points, right? Like if you have a 3-minute pitch and you get to the full 3 minutes and you don't hit everything, okay, that happens.
Right.
But if you have a 10-minute pitch and you don't hit everything, well, that's when there's a red flag, right? But if it's a 10 minutes pitch and you hit everything in 6 minutes, perfect, right? That gives us more time to dig in the Q&A. That's the way I see it.
Appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, it all boils down to practice. And when we do our Prelude pitches, we know which entrepreneurs right off the bat have practiced versus the ones that haven't practiced. And it's always good to wrap it up with a nice ending line at the end, so that you can kind of recap if you have time at the end, and kind of leave, kind of stick it like a gymnast jump almost at the very end, so that people are like really remembering your pitch versus the other pitches they might have heard. And there's a real art to that, and it takes practice. That's why I keep always telling entrepreneurs, practice, practice, practice. And if you're ever in a situation where you've got that 1, 2, or 3 minute pitch time frame, think about even breaking down the syllables of words that you're using in that pitch to make sure you're maximizing your time and getting your best message forward.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next company. Thank you, Nika.
Thank you.
Angel.
All right, let me just get my slide.
Hold on, I'm gonna make you co-host. 1 second.
One second. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so good afternoon. Again, I am the CEO of the Black Brain Trust, and we're developing a scoring tool and a software platform that enables individual and corporate citizens to take data-driven actions that create more equitable companies, that create a more equitable world. To help you understand how I came up with the idea of the Black Brain Trust, I have to take you time. You might not know it by looking at me, but I'm an extraordinary person. Not because I'm rich or famous, but I've done extraordinary things. At one point in my life, I was every negative statistic you can think of for a young Black girl growing up in America. I was a teenage mom. I was a high school dropout. I was homeless, and I was on welfare for many years. The thing is, statistically speaking, based on my race, these outcomes were predetermined. That's the legacy of racism and white supremacy in this country. Racism embedded in institutional and company practices created inequities that limited my access to opportunity by limiting my parents' access to opportunity, and their parents' access, and their parents' parents' access. I'm extraordinary because I overcame those obstacles to become who I am today. I created the Black Brain Trust because my story should not be extraordinary, but it is. We have put man on the moon. I can pull out my phone right now and watch a movie, but we can't figure out how to create more Black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. I've spent my career trying to help people like me gain access to opportunity to improve their lives. What I've learned is that as a society, we tend to look at individual people as needing to pull up their bootstraps and overcome, instead of looking at those embedded practices that can scale opportunity for millions of people at once. We want to change that. And we're not alone. Business leaders know they have a role to play in creating an equitable world. Whether it's because they want to make a difference or because they understand the current shift in consumer, worker, and investor preferences, these leaders understand that being equitable is no longer just a nice thing to be. It's an economic imperative. And it's a critical problem they need to solve. They just haven't figured out how to do it. I spoke to leaders of multinational corporations to 7-person operations, and I heard the same thing. Companies have blind spots when it comes to equity. They track KPIs for every goal that matters to their bottom line, except equity. We believe we can and will make America more equitable the same way we achieve every other goal we have as a nation, by being intentional. We have to solve for equity. Our solution is the Equity in Action Score. We all know you can't improve what you don't measure. So our Equity Action Score does a simple thing that isn't being done at scale in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It creates a clear bar for equity that companies can aim to reach. Our score is industry specific and based on over 100 metrics and critical feedback from Black employees and consumers. The score comes with a report that lets companies know exactly where they're falling short and exactly where they need to invest to become more equitable. There are other tools on the market, but what's different about us is that we're not trying to help companies measure their social impact or how diverse their teams are. We're focused on equity, which requires diversity, inclusion, and good governance, but that alone has not and cannot create the society we're all seeking. The EIA score is for companies who are truly committed to equity and willing to go deep into their company practices to identify inequities embedded within them. It also identifies how and who on their teams will be responsible for making changes to improve their scores over time. In addition to their score, companies can also purchase a detailed report. They can also subscribe to our web-based software platform so C-suite leaders can track data inputs from key staff across their companies. They'll be able to see exactly how they're performing at any point, as well as year over year on their equity targets. Our first score will target the financial industry, which includes banks, credit unions, and community development financial institutions. Not only do they have a requirement to invest in underserved communities, but more equitable banks will have a multiplier effect on Black equity in terms of home ownership, business development, and employment and wages. Our target group will be the 117 banks located in the 10 cities with the largest Black populations. These numbers represent one industry. When we expand to include the other industries, our TAM will easily move into the billions. We have 3 primary strategies to get our product into the hands of company leaders. We'll use our existing networks to target DEI and social impact leaders who will want to know how the EIA score can help them achieve their strategic goals. We also plan to work through industry associations to meet with C-suite leaders and board members and discuss how the EIA score can support company profitability and risk mitigation. In the short term, we're working on securing a known brand as our first beta tester. This will be a key partner who will help to raise awareness of our tool and build confidence in its effectiveness. If we can secure just 24 of those 117 companies we're initially targeting, in the next 2 years, we can earn over $1 million in revenue. So we've established 1 new customer a month as a conservative starting goal. In the next 12 months, we'll seek to patent and beta test our first industry score. We also want to staff up and build scores for 5 more industries and develop our research agenda. Our 2021 objective is to scale up quickly. We want to hire a small team, patent our score, and launch a sales and marketing campaign. Companies have been investing in DEI for a while. However, right now, between COVID and race-based uprisings, there's been a new sense of urgency around addressing racial inequities. We already have 4 associations interested in putting our product in front of C-suite leaders in their networks, and a strong lead with the standard-setting bodies for publicly traded companies. We need to launch our product while companies are hyper-focused on this problem. Together, my co-founder and I have a deep analysis of structural racism, applied research and technology skills, and an understanding of how to scale impact using data. We believe we have the opportunity to become the company standard for equity in the US. We want companies to stop making statements in support of Black lives and put their action where their heart is. The more equitable companies we have, the more equitable our world will be. The Black Brain Trust is helping every company in America put their commitments to equity in action. And that includes all of you. Invest in what will make a difference instead of a headline. Change your company and change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Okay. Q&A.
Good job, Angel.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, no, seriously. Out of all of the, you've come a long way, let me tell you. And I can also tell that you were nervous, but you did better with your nerves this time. You worked through it. That was really good. I'm proud of you. That was good. I'm going to leave my comments and let the rest of the advisors speak, and then I'll make some remarks later.
That was great, Angel. Thank you. Questions I have are, so if I'm a company, I'm a corporation, and I have my score or investigate scored, what's the value of that to me? What do I do with that score?
Well, I think that companies have different reasons for wanting to have their score. And so it'll really depend. I think there are some companies that truly just want to make a difference. And so being able to get at the root cause of the problems that are creating inequities in not just your company, but the impact that your company has on the world is going to be of value to you. I think for board members who might be concerned about lawsuits and issues related to racial discrimination, the Equity in Action score will allow them to have a chance to see exactly where their company is and where they need to make changes so that they can mitigate those risks. I think also we do see that consumer preferences are shifting towards people wanting to spend in alignment with their values around issues of equity and diversity and inclusion. And so companies have the opportunity to show their score and to show those consumers, those workers, those investors, the work that they're doing to really live their values of equity. And I think that that will have an impact on company profits.
I think if you could say that or show that in some way, it would be helpful to just know that, here's an example. As I understand that every company is going to be different. But to be able to say that, for example, if you were company X, by having your score, it could lead you to understand more about this and therefore increase your selling stuff. Because I think every company, regardless of how altruistic they may want to be, it's about the bottom line and showing how that, well, just say employee engagement increases. or you know, we know, and there's a study done by Edelman, which is a PR firm, and they do a trust barometer every year, and it's a global trust barometer on consumer preference and inclination to look at brands and how they score brands. I think there's some data in there that ties exactly to what you're doing, that shows that how consumers now view companies. And there's a line in there that talks about consumers will exercise democracy with their wallets.
Mm-hmm.
It says consumers will exercise democracy with their wallets. And I think if you go to get that report, there's some wonderful nuggets of data and tidbits in there that you could pull to just frame up the value that a corporation would get from having their scorecard. Concrete data.
A clear value.
A clear value proposition on why. It's just not because, I mean, because the value proposition is not because I don't want to get sued. That's not a value proposition. You know, it's not because I don't want, you ought to, a lawsuit. A value proposition is that if you do this, there's real value here. You can increase sales. You have a better story to tell, and it helps your brand. It positions you differently in the market. It leads you. There's so many different real tangible things as a company, as a brand that have value. Not just I don't want to get sued. I don't want to, have people picketing me. That's not a value proposition. And those things that you can pull from there possibly actually lead directly to the bottom line, which, is, again, they want to do good, but they do good business too. So I think that will just, you need to add that in there to just nail it. And that to me, then I think it's good. And you talked a little bit, you talked about, you said you talked with leaders of multinational corporations. I think if you talk to a bunch of them, you should pop up a slide with their logos to show. If you talk to Coke and Pepsi and boom, I've talked to leaders of multinational, there's a slide. And then you talked about equity and embedded practices. I think you should say, you don't have to show it, but you should say what some of those practices are. There are embedded practices that lead to equity. And we all know that, African Americans face this, African Americans face that, women face this, whatever it is that you give when you say these statements, then you should just give me, again, I think the more data points that you have for the story that you tell is great. And I don't need to, sometimes you don't need to show it, you can just say it. We know that 50% of African Americans never get, we know that in hiring, that we know that HR practices, give me something. When you say that, you say it, you put it out there, you got to back it up. And that's it. I think there's it's interesting that you talk about equity, not diversity. So it was interesting to see this take on it from an equity perspective and that the difference. I'm wondering if it would be helpful for you to, because people, I think this is going to be a language change for you. And I think it would be interesting to have a slide to go, this is diversity, this is equity. And there is a difference. I know there's a difference, but I'm also a person of color. And I think that some people don't understand. They think diversity covers everything. And I think you're getting at the heart of a bigger matter here, which I appreciate and understand. I think it's needed, right? But I think most people are diversity, and you're asking for equity, which is a different thing. And I think that they think diversity covers it all. So I would definitely do something that said, this is diversity and this is equity. There is the difference of what I'm asking for.
So how did you come up with and what's the, you mentioned your beginning background. You didn't speak to your statement of qualifications now to develop the analytics to produce the score. And who do you believe to be your competitors? I mean, as you just mentioned, EY has a report out, Citigroup has a report out. There's several PhDs, Dr. Newkirk. There are a lot of PhDs out there who have developed a whole practice of doing equity scoring and inclusion. So how do you differentiate your product, and how do you break through the crowd of those who are offering similar products right now?
So the one thing I will say is, as I've been, going through like the Accelerate Baltimore program and, doing research, especially customer discovery, every time I talk to a company, I learn about some other tool or some other company that's trying to get at similar things. And I think that in terms of what's out there and what you can find, I don't even know the names that you've mentioned. Everything that I've seen is looking at either diversity or inclusion or ESG or something related to social impacts, and I haven't seen anything that specifically focuses on equity, and so I think that is a key differentiator. But like I said, I keep learning about new products and tools all the time, and so I'm not surprised that there are some out there I haven't learned about. In terms of my background and experience, what I didn't really say is that I would consider myself an applied researcher. So throughout my career, I have started out as a researcher, but really wanted to understand the world that I was researching much more better. I knew what it was like from a personal experience to try to turn my life around, but I wasn't engaged in that work. And that's what I have been doing over the past almost 15 years. And so I have, the research background and experience in terms of understanding and have an analysis of structural racism and how it shows up in company practices, not just at the institutional level, but at the structural and the interpersonal levels. And I take that research and my research skills, and I've done the research to look at how that has shown up and developed the score really based off of what the research says. And I think that one of the things that we want to do is we're still in the process of like creating the score, and we want to do some beta testing with companies to make sure that it really reflects an understanding of the industry. But we want to have some of our advisors and people that we work with in the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion to help validate our score, to look at what we've done and sort of give us their sort of backing. And so that's one of the ways that we intend to sort of show on both sides, on the industry side and on the sort of DEI side, that what we've put together is valid. But we haven't gotten there yet. But
Troy mentioned selling the person, and I must say your presentation has been excellent. I would encourage you as an angle to talk. You started out talking about your background, single mother, etc. And I think telling that I speak not just from the PhD analytical, but I speak from the, I'm trying to remember the word, but help me out. I speak from the reality of it.
The authenticity, yeah.
Authenticity of it. I think that would differentiate you from, because companies like to go and buy the PhD, from the Harvard, you could differentiate yourself to say, my research is, I've lived that research. And I think that would significantly, I'm in the D&I and that space, that would really differentiate you from those who are producing, and I can help you later on in some of those who are out there producing these kinds of reports. I think that would put you in a league of your own. I would also encourage you in the beginning. I like quotes from you. You spoke to it. There are a lot of, the New York Stock Exchange now has a quote out there of what it means, the value add to a company of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you're going to be pitching to that, there are a lot of those who have already put that out there. They've spoken, the Stock Exchange, I can give you a whole list of those who have spoken to why businesses have left $4 billion on the table annually by not being equitable. And I think you need a little bit more of those quotes in your beginning to solidify, why this is so critical.
Yeah, one of the things that I've had some trouble with in terms of that is that a lot of McKinsey has done a lot of research on this, and I have talked about some of their work in previous iterations of my deck, but they all speak to the issue of diversity, and I'm really trying to like change the conversation away from just diversity into this broader concept of equity. So that's a part of why I haven't done that, but I would love to talk to you more about some of that.
I'd love to talk to you some more about it.
Angel, your quote that said so much. You said you can't improve what you don't measure, right? And that was a lesson, I believe, that you learned. That was the aha moment that you learned from customer discovery, right? That you realized that companies are not tracking this metric or these metrics. They track every single other kind of metric that affect the bottom line, but this one. And so tying in what Tanya was talking about, bottom line, and that would be a nice way of doing that. And I do agree that changing the conversation is a goal, but I don't know that you'll be able to achieve that in a pitch. And so I think you're going to need to kind of explain the difference of the two more so than the long stretch, the long road of really changing the conversation among people of color, even about what the difference between diversity, equity, and inclusion is. I agree with Tanya also with the data points. You have 100+ data points. You could at least use a couple of examples like, procurement practices or how, just any of them. You've got so many data points just to sort of give, and I know you don't want to give away your secret sauce with your algorithm, and I understand the reason why you don't talk very specifically about that, but a few would really kind of give light to us yearning to kind of get a hint at what we should be tracking or what these metrics might be. I feel like that would be potentially kind of useful there. One last point too. I don't know if Dr. Deem is actually on your board. I know you guys have been talking about him. And one of the things that he said, being a director for a Fortune 500 company, as I recall, was that this is one of the highest priorities right now facing many of the publicly traded companies. And he also mentioned why it's the highest priority. So that gives that sense of urgency to, sort of jump in the market now. The market's hot right now. You did speak about that, while companies are hyper-focused on this problem. But if you could give a little opportunity that is available in the next few quarters.
And Angel, if I were you, if I were going to show data, because you have so many data points, I would go with probably the non-obvious ones that speak to equity that we are not used to hearing and seeing. There are all those ones that we know just off the top of our head, because those are the ones that we have probably experienced or whatever. But there's some that I'm sure you're familiar with, because this is your space, that we wouldn't even think of, that wouldn't be a common known sort of fact that is out there. And I would use that, because then that would also help you show the difference between diversity and equity, right? So I would use a data point that was not a normal data point, not a common one that an HR practice or something that we already know that we've been trying to fix for 100 years, but one that's buried a little bit deeper that sort of highlights your point of why this is about equity.
Yeah.
And one other thing I would add is when you're talking about the algorithm, refer to it as a proprietary algorithm, because that shows a little bit of an intellectual property or like a secret sauce element to what you've created. And you can kind of give little, kind of peeks behind the curtain by showing some of the little elements of it, but, make sure that people understand it goes very deep. And that you're really reaching into some deep data points. And again, the capability of showing, how that data pulls together to create that score. And then the other thing too is you might want to, when you're talking about kind of the rollout strategy and sort of future growth, maybe there's like an award program or something where companies are, really showing their scores, and there's an award system or something that goes to the companies with the highest score. People, just like if you gamify it in a way, people love to be convinced through gamification. And the more, they can achieve something and the steps that they can take to improve their score, all of that can go sort of into the package of getting people to buy into this whole strategy.
I did.
By the way, great looking slides too. Again, another really good looking deck. Yeah.
That was kind of like the badging, right? Isn't that what your whole hope is with badging? It's kind of like a Zagat rating. So you walk by a store and you see a high score, and that indicates that this company is really taking steps, and that the quote about democracy based upon spending kind of is the whole premise of your business model, right? That people will want to spend their money at a place they know is treating people fairly, and that has good governance practices and that equity in action. So that whole badging thing might be something related to what Ann was talking about with, gamification, or this kind of sense that you're involved in making the society better.
Yeah, and you could easily illustrate that with a slide with like a storefront or something that maybe has that logo in the window, because that would certainly, sort of show where you're headed with this idea.
Can I ask a question of you, Tanya and Valerie and Ann? I had this conversation with Angel. I just wanted to get your perspective on this. And it's really not off topic, but the question of external data being used in creating a score, right? That people are writing about, let's say, my recent example is anthropology, and how some of them, their hiring practices, or teaching people to sort of, not teaching them, but suggesting that they follow certain profiles around the store in case they are shoplifting. And so there's public data available that would be one score, and private data that the company is managing their own internal metrics that seems like is another score. Some have said that the public score would scare the bejesus out of most companies, and they would not be as inclined to get engaged. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts might be on that broader sort of philosophical perspective about, like ESG scoring, where you say, we look at lawsuits that have been filed, labor complaints that are done, harassment complaints that have been filed, responses in the chat box on the website, and other places that you can scrape data and make an analysis about a company's practices. What's your sense of the public versus the private?
Well, I think you use the public to inform the private, right? And you use it more as a benchmark. I mean, you can look at anything like the Millennium Development Goals, and you don't necessarily look at the Millennium Development Goals and say that I need to do all this within my company, but you say, how do I contribute toward these goals as a whole, right? So if there's, I don't know enough about Angel's sort of score, but if they're saying that you want to have, if African Americans make up 13% of the population, and you want your, employees to represent that, or women, or whatever it is that you want, then you create what that looks like for you internally. I think you can use the external information to inform how you operate internally. Because yes, I think they will scare something, but it's data, it's fact, but it
Right.
should inform you. You can use it to benchmark yourself, but I don't think you necessarily have to absorb those goals. You need to use them to create your internal goals that will help you. Also, this is like, asking the Titanic to make a U-turn. It's going to be slow. So then you also have to have people who are going to want to do this incrementally. And I need to have you do that at whatever comfort level your organization is going to move. Some will move faster. Some will move much slower. but yet there's always the benchmark of where we're looking to where we need to get to. And I think as long as you have that, then you're fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of companies are recognizing and developing internal strategies and measurements that they use internally that they would not necessarily share externally. But they have what they call their public face of what they're doing, and then they have their internal face of what their measurements are. And actually finding out what their real internal is real difficult from their external. It's as you said, that's shifting the Titanic. I think Angel's product is really, if I look at it, is helping them develop their internal strategies and measurements, which is a little harder, but it's a lot more productive to you. I mean, they're hiring a lot of consultants right now to do that kind of thing. So this, I would say, Angel, what you're offering them is, okay, you've hired 5 different consultants to come in here and to do this. This is your benchmark algorithm to see, so you can start on day 1, where you were, and 30 days later, having spent $2 million on consultants, this is where you are now. And there are a lot of different ways that you could pitch your product, but they don't have benchmarks. And as you know, they change it frequently. So, but if you depending upon how you're pitching yours, it is, okay, this gives you a beginning, a middle, and an incremental measurement to see, for the dollars that you're spending on this, what are you getting out of it?
Well, I think the value, Angel, is what it does is you give them a way to talk about this externally, right? Because you can have all the diversity in trainings and all that, but then were you going to put that out like, hey, we had a diversity training and we trained our I mean, there's nothing you're going to talk about. There's no story there. There's nothing there for me to package that has value, that tells a story, that will actually maybe be a differentiator as it relates to my company, my brand, my story, when I'm recruiting, whether I'm selling a product. I can use this. The value of this score can go on and on and on and on for days because it has external value, right? All the other stuff happens internally, and you really don't there's no real way to package that and then send it out to the universe. But your score allows me to put it on my website. I can put it on all my stuff. I can talk to my recruiting when I go to get new employees. And we have a high equity score here. I can talk about it in my year-end report, all my goals. I can make it part of, management, and you all need to have, look at our equity goals, and this is based on your bonuses are based on it. There's so many ways to use your score, internally, but definitely externally. All the other stuff you can do internally, but then how do you tell that to a consumer or a client or a partner or an organ? It doesn't translate easily. It helps take all the work that they may have done or that they need to do and then package and translate that in a way that actually has value to them.
Yeah.
And for less sophisticated companies, they may not even be capturing the data that they need to capture in the first place to tell the true internal story. So even just highlighting, the missing links that they have in their own system to build that, data story is going to be, I think, something that they may need to work on as well.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Angel. I'm going to move on to the next company now. Mohammed.
Hello, everyone.
Do you have a deck?
Yes, I do have a deck. So share screen. All right. So hello, everyone. So my name is Muhammad Najiola from Full Blast Steam, and so Full Blast. So I grew up in Baltimore. I've witnessed fun turn to felonies quick. in a lot of instances. We were a bunch of undeveloped brains, you know, teenage brains, preteen brains, engaging in and dealing with all sorts of grown folk situations and activities with very little else to do, you know. And this has been the case generation after generation after generation. You look summer nights in Baltimore, you see kids out running the street all hours of the night on their block, or on a few blocks surrounding where they live. And we want to introduce STEAM opportunities to those young people and 21st century skills to them, and introduce that into the equation in a more robust way than it currently is. So we used to go full blast in the grass back in the day. We used to spar, right? And we used to spar hard, fighting each other, you know, with the concept that steel sharpens steel, makes us better fighters. And I want to do the same thing with STEAM, STEAM related activities. We want to add it to the culture. We want to make smart everything for us again, you know, like it was when some of our parents were growing up. I want to tap into the current culture of Wakanda and Black Nerd and Fly Nerd and Black Girls Code, etc. You know, this is a part of the culture now. People are waking up and getting in tune with these concepts, and we want to add value to that. There's an opportunity here for us to scale this thing and to build a rites of passage style ecosystem of nurturing 21st century focused skill development. So we're building a brand that will stick with the users and the supporters from childhood through adulthood. And we think that that's a great business positioning to be able to engage our users with the ecosystem of products and services that support their growth into civic mindedness and being a community-oriented individual, human being. 21st century skill wielding human beings is what we're looking to build. So we launched our company after years of research and development, and we have built an awesome team of advisors and tech coaches who teach young people, teach our clients. So the road to STEAM-based education and hobbies is littered with potholes and hurdles for youth of color from under-resourced communities. The road to ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, street gang culture, and mediocrity is aligned with corporate marketing. If you drive through any hood, you see advertisements everywhere. Young people are being advertised to all the time. And most of the time it's for products and services that do little to support their growth and development. So why us? This is a huge problem, right? No one's seemed to make a lot of impact in it yet, so why us? And we think that our past performance and our revenue to date are credible, make us a credible investment opportunity. Our clients, our target market, public and private schools, 501c3 organizations that serve youth and families, specifically, and we've specifically been focusing our research and development on out of school time frame, not the schools. We've ignored the schools to a large degree. They've welcomed us with open arms because of the need, but that hasn't been our focus because that's not scalable to the degree that the amount of time during the out of school activities can take place. How more scalable that is, there's more time to work with. So this is a list of our clients over the past few years that we've been working with. A lot of the major colleges in the city and organizations, 501c3s, that focus on youth and development. We have some awesome new clients that will support our ability to scale this thing in the pipeline. Job Corps and DOD for our events. Department of Defense, they have family days every year. So we would be a vendor for their family day and leading their family day And there are a lot of other corporations like this too that do the same thing, Black and Decker and others. So sales revenue to date, strictly sales revenue, not including pitch competitions or grant opportunities or things like that over the past few years. So our secret sauce is our authenticity, you know, our ability to engage our young people. We've paid attention to our clients. You know, we paid attention to what our clients and our partners say about their needs, about past experiences with other STEM vendors, and past experiences with certain poorly designed, expensive, and unattractive educational technologies that they've been dealing with. Sometimes they're forced to deal with it because of the structure of their institution, the organization that they're part of. So we've curated and tested the spectrum of products that is on the market, and we use them with our students. And we've designed a series of lesson plans and activity plans and standard operating procedures, new components and ed tech product designs that add significant value to the process of introducing students to all the exciting activities available on the road to STEAM hobbies and careers. So these are the areas of a young person's life in which we would like to add value to, right? This is the existing road to STEM. If you're on the STEAM road or STEM road in any kind of way, this is what these are the points that you're focused on. This is how you're deriving. This is where you're getting your information from, your engagement from. One of these four. We want to add value to these four. There is currently a lot of value in the school system, but I don't want to get too deep into that as far as the downside. But just a major point is that the amount of time to bring young people up to speed with 21st century skills is just not. There's just not enough time in a school day for that currently. The problem with the out of school time current enrichment is the quality. We've went through a lot of training over the years to understand what it is to build a quality STEM program. And there are not many in the city. We are definitely one of the highest quality, if not, one of the highest quality STEM programs in the city. But training for tech coaches or STEM providers is a problem. And we've went through training programs with Digital Harbor Foundation, Maryland Out of School Training Network, so forth and so on. So we've captured that quality and infused it into our engagement and our products. The problem with the tech products now is a lot of them are expensive, and group engagement is not a big part of the design, and that's a big pull for our young people is doing things together with each other. Homeschool and self-study, everybody is not suited for that, and most need a guide. This is our business model. So we do a lot of research and development with a lot of different educational technologies over the years. And our main revenue generating model is our online academy, right? So we bring young people through a process of zero to hero or zero to competent in coding, robotics, 3D printing, pens / design, arts and tech, and other electronics focused projects. Preparing them for the tools that they use in the STEM world now that employers need them to be able to function highly in. So our research and development goes into our online academy, which has been the main revenue generating model to support our development of the products that we're launching and our pop-up gaming events, which serve as both as advertisement and a means to get out in our community and engage our
10 minutes.
Got it.
Let's start with the Q&A. Thank you.
Well, I'll start off. I think, because you did run over, I think you're going to have to synthesize what it is you offer and how you offer it. And be very, and then you at one point you said the schools weren't part of your target market, but then you showed in one of the slides the schools. You mentioned $85,000, I think I saw in sales, but then I thought you said something about, but that doesn't include grants. So I was, the numbers didn't seem to add up, or I didn't understand what the numbers were. And, the time frame that those revenues had been generated. And just in general, what it is you do. I understand who you are in terms of understanding, but I wasn't succinct about what it is you do with these students and how many are you working with. I just wasn't clear about all of those items.
Yeah, I apologize. I didn't get a chance to get to that part, I guess. But to answer your question about the school system, the school system hasn't been our focus, but because of that one point is that there's so much red tape from school to school to school, and that there's with our focus being to scale the amount of young people that enter the STEM roads, the school is an obvious choice for educational technology companies, right? But our focus has been on where the majority of the time is spent, and that's not in school, it's out of school. So if we want to scale this thing and we want to grow the amount of people that are entering the STEM road, then we need to meet them where they are. We need to go to them and get them on the road, right? Not go to the school where we assume they're going to go, right? So that's what that part is about.
So I think I gathered that your principal focus is after school programming. I would really focus on what it is you do with them there and what your value add to them. Don't try to, maybe that's just, we talked about, that's just a slide about other areas, but what is it you do with them in the after school program, and what is it that you deliver that's unique to how you deliver it? And then, why should I invest in you to do that?
Our main revenue generating model right now is the online academy model. So we have tech coaches that teach a certain number of young people for a certain amount of time, and receive and we receive payments from the sponsor of that young person, whether it's the parent, the guardian, the 501c3 organization, so forth and so on. So that's the primary business model. Is as we add tech coaches, we add our ability to add another 20 to 30 kids into a session. So each tech coach adds $34,000 in revenue to our bottom line, and 120 students on the STEM road, on the STEAM road. So per tech coach, if we scale that, if we grow the amount of tech coaches, we can grow the amount of young people and the amount of revenue at the same time.
Now, did that come as a result of COVID, or has that been your plan all along to do the online?
Yeah, so pre-COVID, we were in the schools, in the youth programs. We were physically there. We had tech coaches in 10 locations around the city during one afternoon. But building a virtual online model is crucial to any program being able to scale, because we're not a program. You know, this is bigger than a program. A program is a step. It's one of the components of the solution that we're offering. And that's where we're different than other people, because you're not going to solve this problem with programs. You're not going to program your way out of it. You need to be in the communities. You need to be a part of the culture. You need to have a sport. You need to have a game show. You need to have a national rallying around youth and families to get them engaged in STEAM when you have a national deficit of jobs that are available and no one's going after them. And then you have a whole population of kids that have nothing to do. I mean, it's just to me, it's just an obvious match. You know, you match the needs of the nation and the corporations with the needs of the community. But the problem has been that people don't see our community as viable, as a viable fillers for those slots. You know, so we have to do this ourselves, and that's what we're all about, is putting in the work to get this done ourselves, and we're turning around and asking our community members in Baltimore and beyond to support this effort of investing in our young people.
I totally agree with your need. You have definitely identified a need, and I applaud you for going after addressing that need.
Thank you. We have some solid solutions also, but a lot of times, you know, it's a challenge to distinguish ourselves from what people know as supporting or bridging the tech divide. You know, we're coming with a formula. You know, we're not just another STEM program. You know, and that's a part that we kind of spend a lot of time on, establishing our credibility for the concepts that we've created. But I'm working on it.
So let me just say, and you know, I say this with all love and affection, a pitch contest is an opportunity to do what you just said you have to do. And so you're never going to get a half an hour to sit down and go through the, you know, the need, I mean, that's wonderful, but that's not how money is achieved. And so understanding that while you have a wonderful mission, you're going to have to refine that mission into 1, 3, 5, and 10 minutes with the most important aspects of that, so that you can get the funding to do that. Because you're just, you know, we've spent 10 minutes talking about it, more than that, but you're not going to generally get that, unfortunately, in this world. So your next hurdle will be, how do I refine that down, given given what the world is about in terms of money? Not fair, but that's what it is.
Yep, it's reality. Thank you.
I think just for everybody's sake too, you know, I know you wouldn't bring this up, Muhammad, but you know, you were up all night trying to finish that slide deck today. So I know this morning we were on the call, you're trying to get this done. So I know this was, you know, you hadn't done a run through with the deck that you've just finished. And so this is a tough thing to do. Right up to the last minute. And so I practice once you kind of, you know, you settle on the deck, you settle on the slides, and you can kind of really start thinking about, if I got 14 slides, that means I got maybe 30 seconds at most for each slide. So I got to kind of rip through that. And what I would ask my partner to do, since your timekeeper wasn't doing it, is just kind of give you the heads up. It's like, wait, you're down to 1 minute, or you're down to 2 minutes. Let's keep moving, or skip ahead to slide 10. I need to make that point before we get off there. I know I'm out of time, but at least let me end with slide 11 or something like that. So you're kind of, you know, you're taking if you run out of time because you went over for whatever reason, you can have your partner or someone give you the cue so that you can get to your close or get to the final points that you're trying to make. In this case, you had no idea that you were running up on the 10 minutes. It came and then you had to stop. So, you know, managing the time with your team or a stop clock in front of you or something like that will help you to avoid that from happening as well. But I like the work that you put in. I see the work that you put in on this. And I know after running through it a few times, it's going to get a whole bunch better.
So, Muhammad, I hate I didn't get to see the end of it, but I think with what I've seen, you know, you have the pieces and you have the story and you've done the work already. And I think a couple things I would say is, you know, you've already been doing this work. I would definitely make sure that you capture the work that you've done, not in the sense that you tell the story about it, but there's got to be some data that comes out of it. How many kids do you serve already? How many or, you know, even if you just give me 1 or 2 stories. Tanya, you know, she came through our program and now she's, you know, majoring in science as so-and-so. Joe, he already came through, you know, because you've been doing this for a little bit. So I would put those little anecdotal things in there. I think that you had the slides, but then when you talk so passionately about it. Like when you were just explaining to Valerie what it is, you said, we have the formula. And I think that you should have a slide that says, we have the formula. And this is our formula. It's these 4 things. And, you know, it's not about STEM. It's not about this, it is this formula because no one else is doing it this way. You know, and that's what it is. You know, you don't need to tell me all the little things about it, but you need to tell me what is that formula? Because you just said it to Valerie. You was like, we have the formula. Like nobody's doing what we're doing. Okay, well, all right, well then put that on the slide. Tell me that formula because that's your differentiator right there. That's your selling point. There's a million STEM programs everywhere, but nobody has your formula. You know, so just make sure you capture that and you put that forward, and boom, that's a great selling point. And because of this formula, you know, we are able to do this, and we touch this many children, and we've touched this many lives, and we are in this many schools, but it's the formula that makes us successful. You know, I would go with those sort of things.
Thank you. Got it.
And just to add to that, the storytelling is so powerful, and to open up kind of the presentation with a story and maybe some of the examples, you know, kind of a success story that highlights the problem, but also highlights, you know, how your solution has really impacted lives. You have some great partnerships, by the way. That slide alone was very powerful, showing all the partners, because that shows traction and achievement right there and then. And then just one other thing that I would and this isn't directly directed just at you, but directed to anybody these days that is having to pitch any idea over Zoom or some similar platform. It's really important to look at the camera when you're talking to people, to try to because it's so hard for us to make that, you know, that connection with people these days in these virtual environments. So when you have that high tech setup where you might have multiple monitors and you might be looking at one monitor instead of the monitor that's actually the monitor where we're all seeing you, yeah, make that eye contact, because that's really where we connect better with you visually.
You know, that's right. You really can see your smile, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, come on, man. You know, Muhammad, I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it again, right? When you're talking about what you do, I mean, that vein will pop out in your neck so fast. Your passion comes out, and then when you're talking to the slide, it's gone. It's like I lose you somewhere with the slide, right? But when you were answering, you know, Tanya's question or Valerie's remarks, you know, then it's like, this is just your comfort zone is talking to people, and it's like you're passionate about what you do. It comes out natural and easy and all of that. And I just want to say that you'll get there with the deck. It's not the easiest thing to do. If you haven't been doing it that long, I get you. You're the kind of guy you can sit down with the person, really go into great depth on this, and you got so much to offer, and you're doing so many different things. So the advice that you got about really kind of zeroing in and thinking about, well, how am I going to do this in a 30-second or 1 minute or 3 minute or 5 minute space? And that's really going to be, you know, a challenge to do that and still let your personality be out, still let that passion come through. And I really think that's going to come from practice, but you know, good work. And I appreciate you grind all night. We were on the phone this morning thinking about how to knock this or how to do that. And so, you know, A+, man, on the effort. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So Mohammed, one way to do it, I would say for you, because if you're not comfortable with the slides, but you're so charismatic, you're a good looking dude, so you know we want to see your face and you have great energy, is to do the pitch without the slides and tape yourself, and then watch the tape, and then take the tape be the information that you put on the slides. Right, because you get it when you do it, right? Do it the reverse way, right? It's just like when I have to coach executives, everybody has a different style and how they do it, and it's not going to work. So sometimes I have them give the presentation without the slides, and then create the slides to fit how they're going to talk. So try it that way. Tape yourself doing the presentation, and then see like you get your cadence and get your rhythm and understand like how you're going to talk about it, and then create the slides to fit how
match
you talk.
that. Yeah, nice. Yeah.
Good idea. Great idea. Yeah.
So try that, because not everybody, you have to figure out how it works best for you, right? So, you know, I work with folks who have to give speeches a lot and, you know, different ways, and they get so caught up on the slide. But if I sit down and tape them, and then I go create the slides on basically what they said, it's more natural.
Yep.
And it helps you with your flow, and then it's your flow is there. It's your thoughts, is what you would think, is how you would go about it anyway, and it's not just sort of way that you think you got to talk about it, and it makes you it makes you lose and forget all the things that you really want to sort of highlight.
You know, we were so rigid in the pitch creator process, right? You know, you have this formula doing a pitch, and you got to hit this and hit that, and that didn't work for everybody. And what you're saying, Tanya, I think is a great idea, and I will absolutely work with our teams to think about doing it that way, and compare the two and see, because I just really feel like we lose Muhammad, and we got to find that, because he's just like so powerful. He starts out with, you know, fun time turns in felony time. I mean, they're like these statements that you're making that's so important about, you know, what you're doing, and then you get lost in the slide, and you just we gotta get you away from getting lost in the slide, because you got too much going on otherwise, man.
Right.
Yeah, and it's hard because everybody has different communication styles, and you know, you're not going to change the way a person communicates at this point in the game, right? Because we're all adults and we have our habits and our rhythms and stuff. So you just got to figure out what their communication style is, and then figure out what's the best way to get them to communicate and package it the right way. Give them the right pathway to figure out how to get that out. So that's what I would consider, Muhammad.
All right. Thank you.
Good deal.
Got it.
Most of your coaches Black men? Oops.
Say again?
Are most of his coaches Black men?
Most of my coaches Black men. They're sprinkled in the bunch. Pretty diverse crowd, though, I'd say, especially over the years, definitely. But yeah, yeah.
So I would just tell you that's a real anomaly and you should lead from, you know, go with your strengths. I mean, and I just, Black men out here encouraging our youth to participate in STEAM.
I know, right, Valerie? That's so true.
Like that would be my opening. That's your secret formula, and you know
it's on the slide. That's what we say.
The authenticity, yes, it is.
Us. We're the secret sauce.
But as you and I love Tanya's, you know, let him speak and then tape it afterwards. And, just go with that. That's just what differentiates you, and that's what really impressed me during our conversation. You know, go with that.
Thank you. Great feedback, man. Great feedback session. Thank you, Brittany.
I was on mute. Thank you, Muhammad. Yeah, that was great. So I guess we'll move on to the last company. Nancy?
Or Omari is going to
Oh,
go
is it Omari?
on her behalf today. I think that's what he said.
Okay. Well, it's your turn.
Good afternoon, everybody, again.
Hello.
My name is Omari Bakari, one of the founders of DIPS Technology, who will be launching the Sankofa Community Network.
Are you using a deck today?
I'm not using a deck.
Okay.
I'm going to, we have a deck prepared, but some of our numbers haven't been updated since some recent revelations. So I'm going to just give the pitch. Again, my name is Omari, founder of DIPS Technology. Our team is a pretty, we selected a pretty nice team to get involved in Baltimore. Nancy, our CEO, who has worked in the Eastern Townsend community over the years, has adopted that leadership position from her grandmother. Kareem, who is our CTO, is a retired captain from the Marine Corps. He works in the IT industry in Southern California, and his expertise is deploying communication systems. Obishay is a marketing graduate from Voorhees State University. And myself, I'm from Howard. My background is in communications. I've spent the majority of my life publishing newspapers and directories. So I think I want to start this conversation off with talking about the month of May. May has been an interesting month for us because that's when the ABLE Foundation released their report, a study on the digital divide in Baltimore. But if we go back further in May, HUD had a program called Connect Home, where they were doing some extensive research on how to eliminate the digital divide in public housing. That same month in May, the Trump administration repealed the Net Neutrality Act, which allowed who would be our competitors a way out of not addressing the issue of connectivity in those low-income housing areas. So today I want to talk about three things: the value of connectivity, the complicated problem of not being connected, and our solution, which is an elegant fix to this complicated problem. In Baltimore, as the ABLE Foundation stated in their report, about 99,000 people in Baltimore without internet connectivity. In the public and senior housing environment, that number's about 23,000 for senior citizens. What we realize is that with this pandemic, it exposed the vulnerability of not being connected to the internet because, one, people who have a need for healthcare were disconnected from their health facilities and had to rely on a telehealth platform to do doctor visitations and whatnot. Children in those communities were disconnected from the schools if they didn't have access to the internet. And the problem just goes on and on and on. So what we decided to do was address the problem of connectivity. The problem with connectivity is that there's no real revenue model associated with it. And that's one of the reasons our competitors, Comcast, has totally backed away from addressing that market. And it has left the state and the city in a situation where they don't know how to resolve it with up-to-date technology. So we looked at our customers in that target market in public housing, and we said, well, how do we resolve this problem? Well, we can't just build a Wi-Fi network because it's not going to generate any money. So we had to come up with a vertical revenue program that would actually allow us to make enough money to stand up a mesh Wi-Fi network by providing needed services to that population in public and senior housing. The solution we came up with initially is a remote patient monitoring kiosk that allows those seniors in public and senior housing the ability to monitor and report their chronic ill conditions on a daily or regular basis if needed, without having to leave their building or their home to go to a medical facility. and the need, if they needed to have a telehealth consult, we have software available for them to connect with their doctors or their health plans to give them some feedback on what their chronic illness conditions are. So our business model, we have four revenue streams. One is a telehealth consulting. We generate $7 and we earn $7.95 every time one of those patients have a consult over our network. The second revenue stream is the remote patient monitoring. We charge our customers $29.95 per month for the unlimited monitoring of their chronic illness. The third revenue stream that we have is we allow other app developers to put their apps on our network where they can reach our population, and we charge them approximately 3% of their revenue, which comes to about $2.37 every time that's used. And our final revenue stream is selling data analytics to the healthcare providers so they'll know how to make the adjustments based on the metrics that we provide from usage to accommodate that population, which has been grossly neglected over the years. So our secret sauce is the faith-based community. When we started this program, it started out as a faith-based initiative to get people who lived around the churches to come into the church. They can get on a kiosk and they can get information or provide information to their healthcare provider that they would normally be able to get to. So with the faith-based community, we've partnered with Dr. Calvin Hathaway over at Union Baptist Church. He's been a leader in the digital, in addressing the digital divide in Baltimore. And with him, we're setting up our pilot program at McCullough Homes, City View Towers at McCullough, and the Pennsylvania Avenue AME Zion Senior Building. And that population is approximately 3,900 seniors. Our goal is to come in and get at least 150 to become members of our monthly remote patient monitoring program. And through this, we'll be able to stand up the public Wi-Fi network, subsidize its costs, and provide valuable services to the population in the public and senior housing. That's my pitch.
Thank you. Okay, we'll get into Q&A now.
I want to start investing. I think your value proposition was well thought out. I liked your numbers. I liked it. I thought you gave enough numbers to support your value proposition. I like that you you identified the faith-based community as a target market. I would encourage you to explore. This is going to be really big under the current administration in terms of delivering this kind of service. So I like that you started off with who your credentials are, why you can do this. I thought you did a good job in terms of laying out your value proposition. And I'm sure you don't even need a lot of slides. You just need some background ones that, to show your universe, bottom line profitability and your growth. You don't need, you do a good job of explaining. And I think right now people know the need for it. So good job. I thought you did a good job.
Thank you, Valerie. I was actually thinking you were going to beat me up pretty good here. as I move through this, so I think I could have probably did a better job with the slide deck. I just know that we didn't add the new numbers in there, and I didn't want to stumble when I got there. But thank you, and I know we can do a better job with this.
Hey, Omari, can you tell about? You said you're going to charge your customers $29 a month. Is the customer the patient, or in this case, is your customer Medicaid and Medicare? Aren't they the ones paying that $29, or how does that work?
Great point, John. Yes, our customers, because our customer base is seniors, majority of those seniors are on Medicare. So the billing would come from, even with the telehealth consults, the monthly membership, and the behavioral health with Butterfly Inc. All of those would be billed through Medicare. In addition to that, what I didn't mention is that we will have available Bluetooth medical devices. At some point, we want to get people out of coming down to the telehealth kiosk to be able to access these features from their home. And that way we'd be able to provide them with the Bluetooth scales, blood pressure cups.
And so the kiosks is another area that you can give a little bit more explanation on, how it's being kept clean, how it's secure, does it move around, is it mobile? And, so just an understanding, are you staffing it? Which kind of leads to the bigger question around the financial equation. So you could potentially put in a slide or otherwise what it really looks like. Out of the $7.95 per telehealth consult, you're going to get X, and so out of that $7.90, what is your portion? Are you sharing that with others, et cetera, just to be able to show what your real revenue looks like? Because I remember you saying something about the $29.95 or the $20. That is for monthly monitoring services that Medicaid or Medicare will provide the person providing the monitoring service with that much money per month. And so the amount of time or the number of times that a patient comes into the kiosk, is that what triggers it, or it's just a monthly fee and it doesn't matter how many times that the person visits the kiosk?
Well, let me address that first issue on the telehealth consult fee of $7.95. That is a basic fee that Medicare has said that a telehealth provider could charge, or a telehealth service could charge a provider. So out of that, yes, there is some revenue sharing going on. Our partner, Dr. Touch, they developed our software for us. We will pay them $1.50 every time that telehealth consult is accessed. We will also create a revenue share opportunity for the churches to get involved in our network. And those revenues will come from the telehealth consult usage, and also we'll provide a commission for all of the members of the church or the church's surrounding community that they bring in for the remote patient monitoring. That commission will be around 10 or 15%. And yes, the kiosk can be moved around, and we will have to have a staff person. Our numbers are based on being able to provide this service from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. We will have 2 part-time employees that will get 6 hours in a day, and that's going to cost us about $48,000 a year.
One last question. So the third revenue stream you were talking about, bringing on a company called Butterfly, I think you said, that is, you're talking about adding additional providers onto your network. So are these competitors, or what is it? So is Butterfly doing the same thing, or what are they doing?
Well, Butterfly is a behavioral health application. They're not competitors, and they provide, their app was built around patients with autism being able to monitor behavioral health. We look to invite a variety of other telehealth applications on board our network to generate additional revenue. Putting up we understand why Comcast is not dealing with this particular market. One of the problems that we looked at, and there's other companies that have surfaced and have tried to address this market and providing services as little as $10 a month. But in this particular population, in Baltimore and across the country, if you're living in public housing and you're a senior, you are probably the poorest amongst the poor. And $10 or $120 a year sometimes just doesn't, they don't have that discretionary income. So we've had to figure out a way to provide this population internet access and subsidize it with a variety of different revenue streams. And I think we've achieved that with the 4 revenue streams that I mentioned, and hopefully the 5th revenue stream that I really didn't get into was the medical devices, because we still don't have accurate numbers on that. Those revenues will allow us to not only stand up the Wi-Fi network in the 13 identified public housing in West Baltimore, but we believe that over the course of a couple of years, we'll be able to help Baltimore public housing and senior housing throughout the entire city of Baltimore.
One last thing. I thought it was the last one. This is just actually the last one. I read yesterday that the adoption rate for telehealth is real high with youth and real low with the elderly. I mean, it's almost like completely inverse relationship. The people that need it the most are the ones that are least likely to use it. With that adoption rate question, maybe you ought to try to address how you're going to educate your population about the technology, about the service, how you're going to literally get the, digital learning and all of the things associated with this have been the reasons why the adoption rates, at least what they're saying, the reason why the adoption rates are so low with seniors. So you might want to think about including something that says, we're going to have this program that's going to help to increase the adoption rate over time. And, through the churches, we're going to ask the folks to, help to keep that message in front of the members, or some other thing that you can do to address the fact that the population you're targeting really has the lowest adoption rate to the telehealth right now.
Yeah, when we first started talking about addressing this particular population, I had this picture in my mind of my grandmother. She has a Bible, and I swear to God, that Bible has to weigh about 75 pounds. She hit me with it once, so I know it's heavy. But the issue became, how do I get her to put that Bible down and pick up a tablet to do her Bible study or to follow a pastor in church? And it's the same issue that we have today. Fear. The fear of not knowing what to do, not knowing if they can achieve or work it, or not knowing if they can get the result that they look at. We have to go into our communities and address the issue of fear with that particular population. The digital literacy, the education, the outreach has to be customized to make our seniors feel okay about using this technology. This year I became a senior, so I'm hoping I can relate to these folks a little better. But that is our challenge, and we are really focused on, I think, the secret sauce of involving the faith-based community will give us some leverage in that area, because a lot of those congregations in Baltimore are traditional, and they are mostly seniors who are participating, or a large number of seniors.
Thanks.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with a company. It was a gentleman, I actually saw him pitch in a competition that I think he actually won, believe it or not. And he's done very successful since then. And he's doing medical checks in barbershops. You guys might have heard of him. He might be an interesting person to connect with and speak to, because I know he had to sort of probably follow along some of the same challenges that you're going to be facing, but looking at really creative strategies as well. And I love the direction of this. By the way, I have senior parents that have now that we have telemedicine and doctors have adopted it better, it's made my life a lot easier. And I know they're getting better checkups as a result of that. So I strongly, back exactly where you're going with this. And I'm wondering whether or not these kiosks, you could even help subsidize the cost of them. And maybe you're already thinking of this by having some kind of advertising or something displayed. I don't want to, mock up your brand too much, but that might be a way to help cut into some of those costs.
Well, coming from the publishing industry, advertising revenue is very important to the publication being able to continue to come out. But we've thought about that, and again, that might be a revenue stream moving forward. But we don't want to. I think one of the issues that a person would have who is apprehensive about technology is to go online and have to get hit with 2 or 3 commercials before they can get to what they're trying to do.
I'm not talking about the online part. I'm talking about the physical kiosk.
On the kiosk itself?
On the kiosk itself, yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that could
flashing neon, man.
Yeah.
Or even a community bulletin board. I mean, it could be
community bulletin board. Yeah.
So other reasons to be drawn into the kiosk, other, it's there, having community information up there as well, that might be helpful.
Thank you.
Is that kiosk an enclosed space so that a person can actually have the dignity required with a telehealth visit? When you have in public housing, you got 4 kids and a 16-year-old girl that's with her gynecologist is going to talk about that with all her brothers in the room. People are kind of, they really don't want to talk about their health condition and other people listening. What is the dignity factor with that kiosk? I know that's one of the reasons I read some time back about how they went out of fashion in CVS and some of the drugstores because they would blurt out a person's weight and everyone's standing there to pick up their medicine, and you're telling the whole world how much you weigh or what your blood pressure is. So how do you address the dignity factor?
The dignity factor is very important. We've looked at a variety of the kiosk itself is a 24-inch tablet connected to a Wi-Fi mouse and keyboard on a stand, and it has 9 compartments on it. Those compartments each have a medical device that the patient can use, and it's a stand. Now, the company, our partners, Doctors Touch, they actually have a suite, and we are considering placing those suites in senior buildings as an amenity to the property, much like a fitness center would be in a building. A senior building has a space where there's a suite for telehealth and remote patient monitoring. Some numbers that I didn't mention early on. 85% of every senior has some kind of at least one chronic illness. 60% has at least 2. So we know in this population, and just based on Baltimore's health map, in those public housing and senior housing, those are the worst conditions for healthcare and seniors with chronic illnesses. So we want to create a space where there's privacy. We may have to look at renting a room or office space in those buildings. We're looking at setting up a space inside the faith-based entities. So yes, there will be privacy, no matter whether it's just a kiosk or if we have to create a suite, there will be privacy that patient can feel comfortable, safe, and dignified in using this apparatus.
Mm-hmm. Brittany, I'm thinking that this is a wrap. We're right up close, running up on 2 o'clock. We've just finished our last of the 5. I've had great feedback and questions and presentations. I would just like to invite everybody to come back on the screen. I gotta say that, this is the last 5 minutes of the Accelerate Baltimore actual programming. And so I'm really excited because, you know, I've been at this for, you know, quite some time, and it's been a volunteer effort of immense benefit to me personally. I've really learned a lot, and I appreciate getting to meet each one of you in the cohort and all of the participants to help you get here. I just got to say again, I remember where you were 12 weeks ago. I remember what it was like that first day when you were selected, and where you are now is so far from there. And I'm just real proud of the work that you put in, and so happy that we were able to end with TEDCO and to be able to have this kind of feedback session to each of you. You have 2 more pitches, right? We've got a practice Thursday night, and then the closing ceremony on Tuesday. And I would hope and ask that Tanya and Ann and Brittany, all of us, Troy perhaps, would be willing to come to the closing ceremony and just see one last time. Anyways, that's what's ahead for you two, you all, is 2 more pitches. What I would ask you to do is really try to incorporate the stuff you heard today into that. I would ask you all to have your decks ready for the closing ceremony. Have a deck. You did good without it, but it's not good enough, and it won't be as good as it will be with it. And so practice. And thank you so very much, Brittany and Ann, for making this possible, the Prelude pitch, and inviting your advisors and employees. I just can't say thankful enough to the kind of support that TEDCO has had over the years for entrepreneurs. It was there for me. I was part of ETC as well, and this is a great afternoon. So best of luck to everybody, and thank you for participating.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.